Breaking. Ex-Big Brother contestant Morgan Pope taken into custody. It was just after sunrise when the quiet street in West Hollywood began to stir. The neighborhood was calm, birds on telephone wires, a delivery truck turning the corner, the faint sound of a morning radio show playing somewhere in the distance. Inside apartment 4B, Morgan Pope sat at his kitchen table, wearing an old gray hoodie and holding a cup of black coffee that had already gone cold. His eyes were tired, fixed on the glow of his phone screen. The world outside seemed distant, but the world inside that phone was loud. Headlines, tweets, videos. Former Big Brother star accused. Fans demand answers from Morgan Pope. He stared at them motionless. Each word hit him like a wave. Just a few months ago, he was America's favorite villain, the charming manipulator of Big Brother 27. Now he was trending again, for reasons he couldn't control. A faint knock echoed through the apartment. Then another. Louder. Morgan set the phone down and stood up. The hallway felt longer than usual as he walked toward the door. When he opened it, two figures stood there. Plain suits, quiet eyes, the kind that said everything without saying a word. "Mr. Pope," one of them said softly, "we need a moment of your time." Morgan's heart began to race. "What's this about?" The other man glanced at a folder in his hand. "It's regarding an ongoing case. We'd appreciate your cooperation." For a second, everything around him seemed to stop. The hum of the refrigerator, the city noise outside, even his breath. He managed to whisper, "Am I under arrest?" The agent didn't answer directly. "We just need to clear a few things up." Moments later, the door closed behind them. Neighbors peeked through cracked doors as Morgan stepped into the hallway, hands trembling slightly, phone still in his pocket. His mind flashed with faces. Vince, Ashley, Ava. The people he lived with in that glass-walled house that changed his life forever. The hallway lights flickered once. The elevator door opened. As he walked in, one of the agents murmured into a radio, "Subject in custody." Downstairs, the early sunlight hit the windshield of the black SUV waiting by the curb. The door opened. Morgan hesitated, looking up at the apartment windows one last time, as if searching for something familiar. No one was there. The door shut. The car pulled away. Inside, the air felt heavy. The city blurred past outside his window. Palm trees, posters, people who had no idea what was happening. His phone buzzed in his pocket. Missed call, Vince Panaro. He didn't reach for it. He couldn't. The music in the background slowed, a haunting piano echoing like distant memories. Footage from Big Brother flashed in his mind. Laughter, betrayal, confessions in the diary room. Then the words from the agent replayed quietly in his head. "We just need to clear a few things up." He knew it wasn't going to be that simple. As the car disappeared into the morning traffic, a single coffee mug sat untouched on his table, the steam long gone, but still warm enough to remember what peace felt like. The car stopped after what felt like an hour, though it was barely 20 minutes. The building looked ordinary. Beige walls, tinted glass, nothing that screamed police from the outside. But inside, everything smelled like cold metal and silence. Morgan's hands were free, but his freedom was gone the moment the door shut behind him. The sound of his shoes on the tiled floor echoed through the hallway. A fluorescent light flickered above. The agent in front didn't look back. "This way," he said quietly. They stopped before a gray door with a small window. Inside, one table, two chairs, a recorder. No clock. Morgan sat down. His heart was still pounding. He'd been through reality TV twists, alliances, public judgment, but nothing felt like this. Not the cameras. Not the votes. This was real. The door opened again. A woman entered, holding a thin folder. She looked calm, unreadable. "Morgan Pope," she began, taking the seat across from him. "You know why you're here?" He shook his head slowly. "No. Nobody's told me anything." She placed the folder on the table, sliding it toward him. Inside, a few printed photos, documents, and one still image from a security camera. Morgan's eyes narrowed. "What is this?" "A transaction," she said. "From 2 weeks ago. Your name was linked." He stared at the paper. A signature, not quite his, but close enough to raise suspicion. "That's not mine," he said, voice trembling. "Someone's using my name." Her tone stayed calm. "Then you'll have no problem explaining." Morgan leaned back, his pulse quickening. Explain what? I didn't. You were seen meeting with a man named Adrian Rocha, she interrupted, flipping to another page. Ring any bells? Morgan froze. Adrian, a fellow contestant from Big Brother 27. Yes, I know him, he said softly. But that was months ago during the show. She studied him carefully. We have evidence suggesting contact after filming ended, involving a private investment deal connected to an offshore account. Morgan's throat tightened. He blinked hard, confusion mixing with fear. This is insane. I haven't done anything illegal. She didn't respond right away. The silence pressed on him like weight. The hum of the lights grew louder. Finally, she said, then help us understand why your signature appears on this agreement. Morgan's voice cracked. Because someone wants to destroy me. That's why. For the first time, her expression shifted. A flicker of sympathy, maybe doubt. Outside the glass window, the two agents from earlier stood watching. One whispered something to the other. The taller one nodded. Inside the room, Morgan sat still, hands clasped tight, eyes on the table. The coffee stain on the paperwork blurred slightly as a tear fell onto it. He wasn't crying for guilt, but for exhaustion, for being misunderstood, for the world that loved to turn stories into weapons. The woman finally closed the folder. You'll stay here until we finish processing. We'll talk again soon. When she stood and left, the door clicked shut behind her. Morgan's reflection stared back at him in the darkened glass. The same man who once smiled for millions, now sitting alone, unsure if anyone would believe him again. He leaned back, whispering to himself, I just wanted my life back. Outside, a phone rang somewhere down the corridor. A voice answered. Yes, we have him. Morgan Pope. He's here. The walls inside the holding room had no color. Just gray. Empty like the silence that surrounded him. Hours had passed, or maybe only minutes. Time had stopped meaning anything. Morgan sat there, elbows on the table, head bowed. His hoodie sleeves were rolled up, his fingers trembling slightly. The fluorescent light above flickered again, humming like a heartbeat that wasn't his. Through the narrow window, the sky outside had already turned a shade of dull orange. Evening. He hadn't eaten. He hadn't spoken. Then the door opened. A young officer stepped in, placing a small paper cup of water in front of him. Morgan looked up slowly. Can I call someone? The officer hesitated, then nodded. One call. That's it. Morgan took the phone with shaking hands. He dialed a number he hadn't used in months, Vince Panaro. It rang. Once. Twice. Then a voice answered. Morgan. He exhaled, eyes closing. Vince, they arrested me. The silence on the other end was heavy. I know, Vince finally said. It's all over the news. Morgan's throat tightened. They think I forged something, some deal with Adrian. I swear I didn't. I believe you, Vince said quietly. But this is bad. They're saying money moved through a charity in your name. Something about Bahamas accounts. Morgan pressed his forehead against his hand. That's not me. Vince, you know I'd never. I know, Vince said again. But someone's making sure the world doesn't. For a moment, neither spoke. The hum of static filled the space between them. A fragile connection between two friends who once played a game built on lies and loyalty. Then Vince whispered, There's something you should know. Morgan's heart skipped. What? Adrian's gone. He disappeared last week. No one can reach him. His phone's dead, his social media wiped. It's like he vanished. Morgan's grip tightened on the phone. No, that's not possible. He texted me last. The officer tapped the table. Time's up. Morgan looked at him, desperate. Please, just one more minute. Time's up, the officer repeated, taking the phone away. The line went dead. Morgan sat back, eyes wide, his mind racing. Adrian gone. The forged papers. The offshore account. Someone had set this up perfectly. Outside the interrogation room, the same woman from before watched him through the glass. Another officer handed her a file. There's something new, he said quietly. She opened it. Inside were surveillance stills. Morgan walking into a parking lot, late at night, meeting someone wearing a dark hoodie. The timestamp. 3 days before the alleged transaction. Her brow furrowed. Where was this taken? Security camera, Westfield garage. We cross-checked the car plates. Registered to Adrian Rocha. She looked back through the glass at Morgan, who now sat motionless, staring into nothing. The lights dimmed slightly as the evening deepened. The low rumble of distant thunder rolled across the sky. Inside the room, Morgan whispered to himself, "If he's gone, they'll blame me." His reflection on the one-way glass stared back, hollow, lost. A man who once played a game where truth and lies were entertainment, now trapped in a game where truth could cost his life. Somewhere outside, camera flashes began, journalists gathering, police vehicles moving, whispers of Morgan Pope arrested under suspicion of fraud and conspiracy. But inside, the story was still unfolding, and Morgan Pope was the only one who didn't know how deep the trap went. He leaned forward, whispering almost to himself, "They wanted a villain again, so they made one." The camera lingered on his face, tired, scared, and breaking. The night outside the station had turned cold. Rain fell in soft streaks against the glass, blurring the streetlights into golden smudges. Inside, the air was still. Morgan sat alone in the same interrogation room, his reflection faintly visible on the darkened window. He hadn't spoken in hours. The officers had stopped asking questions. The silence now was punishment enough. A guard opened the door just long enough to place a small tray on the table, a sandwich half-wrapped and a bottle of water. He didn't touch either. In another part of the building, the investigator, the same woman from before, was watching a monitor. A video replayed again and again. Morgan meeting a man in a parking lot, then the image fading to black. She rubbed her temples. "It doesn't add up," she whispered. An officer turned from his desk. The timestamps check out. His phone was off during that hour. She frowned. And Adrian Rocha? Still missing. The rain outside grew heavier, the rhythmic tapping on the windows echoing through the hall. Back in the room, Morgan stood and walked to the mirror. His voice was low, almost breaking. "If you're watching," he said, "then you already know I didn't do this." The glass, of course, didn't answer. But somewhere behind it, the investigator's expression softened. Not pity, not sympathy, just doubt. The kind of doubt that changes everything. Cut to Vince Panaro's apartment. Stacks of files, a glowing laptop screen, news reports playing quietly on loop. Vince had always been the calm one, logical, measured. But not tonight. His eyes were bloodshot, fingers moving fast across the keyboard. He clicked on an old group chat. BB27 cast reunion. Unread messages. Dozens of them. Morgan had sent one 2 nights ago. Adrian's been acting strange. Something's off. Vince stared at it. Then he opened a folder labeled Adrian. Inside, screenshots, wire transfers, messages from a burner account named GhostPlayer27. He whispered, "No way." The timestamps matched the day Adrian vanished. Money transfers, not to Morgan's account, but to one linked to an LLC under a fake name. Rachel Lynn Media Holdings. Vince's mind raced. Rachel Lynn. He recognized that name. Not a stranger. A Big Brother producer from the season they filmed. He sat back slowly. The pieces started to fall into place like a cruel puzzle. Cut back to the police station. Morgan sat again, hands clasped, eyes red. The investigator entered quietly, closing the door behind her. "I've been reviewing everything," she said. "There's something inconsistent." Morgan looked up, voice weak. "So you believe me?" She didn't answer directly. Instead, she placed a photo on the table, the same parking lot image. This footage was altered. Morgan's breath caught. "Altered?" She nodded. "We had our digital forensics team check the metadata. The timestamp was changed. Whoever did this wanted you to be there." His hands gripped the edge of the table. "So someone's framing me?" She met his eyes. "That's what it looks like." Morgan exhaled shakily. Relief and anger collided in his chest. "Who would do that?" The woman leaned forward. "That's what we're trying to find out. Do you know anyone who might have a reason to hurt you?" He thought for a long moment. The house, the cameras, the alliances, the lies. Then one name whispered through his memory, Adrian. "He said he'd protect me," Morgan muttered. "He said we'd take care of each other after the show. But he's gone now." The investigator watched him carefully. Gone, or hiding? Thunder rumbled outside. Somewhere in that storm, a car engine started, the camera cutting to a hooded figure sitting behind the wheel of a dark sedan. The dashboard lights flickered. A passport on the seat read, Adrian Rocha. His hands tightened on the steering wheel. His phone buzzed once with a new message. Ghost Player 27. He's taking the fall. Leave now. The car pulled away into the rain. Back inside the station, Morgan leaned forward, whispering almost to himself, "This isn't about money, is it?" The investigator tilted her head. "Then what is it about?" He looked up slowly, voice trembling. "It's about revenge." The camera closed in on his eyes, the pain, the realization that the game he thought ended months ago was still being played. Only this time the stakes weren't fame or money. They were his life. The rain outside kept falling, washing the city clean, but not him. Not yet. The morning broke in silence. The city, drenched from the night storm, seemed to hold its breath, as if waiting for something to end or perhaps for something to finally begin. Inside the police station, Morgan sat by the window of his cell, watching the pale sunlight spill across the floor. His face was tired, his eyes hollow. Days had passed since the arrest, days filled with questions, confusion, and the heavy weight of being misunderstood. He hadn't cried. Not once. Until that moment when he saw a bird land just outside the bars, wings trembling, feathers soaked, still fighting to stay alive. And then quietly, a single tear slipped down his cheek. Down the hallway, the investigator walked quickly, clutching a file. Her voice was low but urgent as she spoke to the sergeant. "Release him. The evidence has been re-verified. The digital footage was fabricated. The real suspect has crossed the border." The sergeant frowned. "You're sure?" She nodded. 100%. Within minutes, the cell door opened. Morgan looked up, unsure if this was another trick of the game that had swallowed his life whole. "You're free to go," the officer said gently. For a moment he didn't move. Then slowly he stood, walking past the hall that had seen his worst days, each step echoing like a heartbeat. Outside, Vince Panaro was waiting, standing by his car, the raincoat still damp from hours of searching. When their eyes met, there was no need for words. Vince simply walked forward and pulled him into a tight, wordless hug. Morgan's voice broke, barely a whisper. "They took everything from me, Vince. My name, my peace." Vince's voice trembled. "We'll get it back. I promise." They sat inside the car for a long time, the engine off, the world outside moving on as if nothing had happened. Vince handed him a flash drive. "This," he said softly, "is everything. Proof that Adrian and Rachel were behind it. They were using you as a scapegoat to cover their money trail. It's over, Morgan." Morgan held the drive in his palm. It felt light, far too light for something that carried so much pain. He looked out the window again. The city was waking up. People were laughing, walking, drinking coffee, living. He whispered, "It's never really over, is it?" Vince didn't answer. He didn't need to. Cut to a quiet graveyard outside Los Angeles. A week later, a small crowd stood gathered around a fresh stone. Adrian Rocha, 1996 to 2025. The news had broken that Adrian's car was found off a cliffside near the Mexican border. No signs of struggle. No farewell note. Only a single phone left behind. And a text drafted but never sent. "I didn't mean for it to go this far." The camera panned slowly to Morgan, standing a few steps away, holding a single white rose. His face was calm now, not angry, not broken, just quietly empty. He placed the rose on the stone, his voice barely audible. "You were my brother once, before the fame, before the cameras. I hope wherever you are, you finally found peace." The wind carried his words away. For a long moment he stood there, the man the world had judged, the man who lost everything just to find a sliver of truth. As he turned to leave, the clouds broke apart. A thin ray of sunlight touched his face. It wasn't redemption. It wasn't forgiveness. But it was something close to freedom. A voice played faintly from his memory, the one Adrian said the night before the finale of Big Brother 27. "You play the game to win, but sometimes you lose yourself trying." Morgan walked away slowly, his reflection fading with each step, until only the rain remained.